Houston Cougars, a furious comeback to knock off Duke and advance to the national championship game.
There is Zion Chris, big hole, open sesame. Zion Chris, wow, the 72-yard house call.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby. Yes!
Welcome to the Scott Holm Podcast, where the fact that the calendar is about to turn to June does not mean that we are short on Cougar sports things to talk about. That's one thing we really enjoy here. We're not going to be the kind of pod that complains that there's nothing to talk about in the world of Cougar athletics when I think we have a really just bursting at the seams slate of things to talk about tonight. New baseball coach, the golf team competing in NCAA championships, track and field is about to participate in the penultimate event of the entire Cougar athletic calendar year. Some off-season stuff to hit on, some player comings and goings we're going to find time to talk about here as well. Bobby, know you were busy while most of us were lazing about here on Memorial Day weekend, but glad you're getting a little R&R here. How are you doing, friend?
Yeah, man, super excited. Had a good weekend work-wise. We stores were busy, which is always good for everyone's pocketbook. So, and some people were getting some nice new mattresses. But in all seriousness, everything's good here. Nice, after being out of town last week, and we did 2 episodes and everything that comes with doing a 6.5-hour drive. It's nice to be back in the at home base and talking Cougars with you, bud.
And like I always do at the top here, but never want to forget it. Please, 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 if you do not do so already, support the work that Bobby and I do, putting on a weekly independent Houston Cougar sports podcast by going to patreon.com/SH podcast. At long last, I could actually put this on the calendar. We will be next week doing our big off-season men's basketball episode now that I think fully and officially know what the coming season's roster is going to look like, talking a lot of one of our favorite subjects over there, the Houston Cougar men's basketball program. If any of that sounds good to you, the thought of supporting the work that we do on a weekly basis sounds good to you, please go to patreon.com/SH podcast. And even if you don't support the work that we do there, you could really help what we do by leaving a 5-star review. Won't give a long spiel for it, but when podcasts say if you leave a 5-star review, it helps us, they're not kidding. And
no.
For the cost of $3.99, you can give us a 5-star review of your podcast out of choice if you like the work that we do and want other Cougar fans to see all the stuff we're talking about, or hear, I guess, all the stuff we're talking about at the Scott Holm Podcast. Got to lead off, of course, as we always do when a team is participating in a championship. We're going to talk about the 54 holes of golf that were played in Carlsbad, California by your Cougar women's golf team, which we will dig into here in, I guess, probably our last of the season edition of Cougar Golf Corner.
The Lady Cougar golf team was out in Carlsbad at the Omni course out there. They played the North course. And as we told everybody, top 15 advance into that next round. Cougs unfortunately finished 20th, but did miss by only four strokes overall. Really good performance from the Cougs there. I think, you were 4 off advancing after the first round. And it definitely felt like one of those basketball games where you fall behind early and then you kind of get it close, and a classic example is you're down 13 and you cut it to 4. And then you start to get those
basket away.
We're a basket away from being a basket away. Next thing you know, it's back to 11 and you're like, oh, come on. There were a lot of those moments in this in this championship. But I said heading in that the Cougs probably weren't favorites to advance. But what I wanted was the final day to be kind of interesting, where I had to check my phone while I was working, just kind of see, are we going to be able to make it? How close are we going to get? And buddy, we got to do that. Heading into the final day, you were in striking distance. You cut it down to, I think, 3 at one point. You were looking good. You were feeling good. You were shooting a pretty low score. And, it just didn't happen for the Cougs. But overall, really exciting. You didn't play your best golf. I think just by looking at the scores, you saw a lot higher scores than you had seen the previous 2 tournaments. You kind of just run out of energy, a little bit of a Cinderella story. You finished top 2 at Big 12s. You finished second in your region. You just kind of ran out of the juice. There's probably a lot of pressure, a lot of excitement. You're happy you're there. It's a classic. You make the tournament, and the Cinderella kind of runs out of steam at the Sweet 16 kind of deal, round of 32, something like that. So, Sam, before I talk about the seniors, how was it as a casual golf fan kind of following it, man?
Yeah, I have some notes here. I kind of like you said, you could sort of tell the majority of this team hadn't played in this event yet. I think maybe that explains why Moa had such a great first round, because she's competed at Carlsbad before. She's competed on the stage individually before, whereas her 4 teammates hadn't. I really thought, looking at that day 1 round, the 5 birdies and 10 bogeys on the back 9
that
seemed to hurt you the most. And kind of the reverse on day 2, you had a really, really tough front 9, 13 bogeys of some kind, only 1 birdie. Definitely your worst kind of 9-hole segment of golf for this event. Your top individual from day 1 actually had the most birdies Moa did out of that group, which, it's not great, but your back 9 was a lot better. I really would say your last 27 holes of golf, from the back 9 on day 2 to the 18 on day 3, I'm not out of bounds.
Really good golf.
Really good golf. Unfortunately, you were kind of in that position where it's like, you were at one point I saw we're 3 strokes away. And that, to me, even as a more casual golf fan, I was like, okay, that's
a birdie, a bogey. That's a birdie and a bogey, and you pick up 2 just
exactly.
like that.
Like, that's enough for the teams in front of you to maybe drop a little bit and you to have a good hole. Like, but you just couldn't get past that. Yeah, but that good back 9 on day 2 meant you weren't totally out of it going into round 3, which was, I think, where both of us wanted to see this team. I mean, some of the same general problems in what was ultimately your final round, even though it was by far your best. You had more birdies in the front 9 than you did on day 2. And again, by all rights, your best 18 holes on day 3 in this event, you were hoping to just be in it. I knew it was going to be a challenging course. I mean, you're competing against the true best of the best in women's college golf. And even knowing now that this was the end of the road for this team and an amazing group of seniors, reiterate kind of what you said. I think everyone involved here can be really proud of how they competed and represented themselves and represented the University of Houston. I have some bigger picture thoughts too, but I was gonna let you get to that.
No, kind of where I was at is, like, when you really look at it, right? This team finished 20th in the country. Like,
you finished ahead of. I had notes on that, but you finished ahead of a bunch of teams that were ranked ahead of you. Teams that were finished ahead of you, way ahead of you. Like Auburn and A&M were like top 10, almost top 5. I think A&M was 4 and Auburn was 6, and they finished behind you.
Yeah, and so you finished top 20 in the country. I think I was kind of doing the math in my head. This is the second best finish of a U of H team this year. Number 1's basketball. Number 2, if you're finishing 20th, that's higher than football finished. It's higher than women's basketball. It's higher than anything but men's basketball. Something to be super excited about, man. And going forward,
men's track is 23 right now, so that'll actually be an interesting one to watch, seeing where you finished outdoors. But right now, number 2.
We might have to talk to Dustin about the tiebreaker for our preseason questions is which team non-basketball finishes the highest in their national rankings. That might be a fun little tiebreaker.
I don't want to speak for him, but I think he would be extremely down for that.
We'll get a text in a couple of days about it for sure.
Yeah.
But just kind of big picture, what this team may look like going forward. I'm not ready to, talk everything about that, but all I can tell you is the Cougs still look good going forward as well. You had a player you had 2 players that will be back next year who got to play in this national championship. Know what it's like, know what to expect. And the future's bright for Cougar women's golf.
I mean, this is a program in no uncertain terms that punched above its weight by just getting here, punched above its weight by finishing 20th. Going back to the Big 12 championship event, you led for a good chunk of that event, something you'd never done before, and still, when it was all said and done, finished ahead of a bunch of older, more established, I would guess, better resource programs in the regional at Louisville. This group did what no other team in this program's young history has done and found a way to play their best golf those first 2 days. Then the final day, maybe not playing your best golf, still dug deep and not let the pressure of that moment get to them, and finished higher in their respective regional than any other Big 12 program did in that round when it was all said and done. Of course, wish we were still following along as the team played round 4 and then match play in Carlsbad, but nobody involved with Cougar women's golf should have any regrets. They fought their butts off.
No,
got to
not
play
at
more
all.
golf than all but a select few teams did this year. Finished ahead of, I mentioned it a moment ago, 2 top 10 teams, A&M and Auburn, along with other higher ranked teams, Ohio State, Ole Miss, Florida State, and Baylor. I mean, it's sad to say goodbye. This is one of my favorite senior groups since we started this podcast. Melissa Videnskild, Natalie St. Germain, Alexis Aldana. They joined the program to go back in time after head coach Lydia Laspria's first season, which was a tough season. If you'll remember, All-American Karen Fredgard left to go pro after the previous season, going to the NCAA championships as an individual. And she had a great summer and fall and elected to go play in the Symetra Tour. The top 2021 freshman from that season followed your former head coach Garrett Chadwell to A&M, left you with a lot less proven team. And that was actually that 22 spring season, the first time U of H was eligible for the NCAA as a team and missed it. I mean, that was the situation those 3 at the time freshmen stepped into when they all left their home countries to come play for U of H. And 4 years later, the program went 4 for 4 going to NCAA regionals. Moa becomes the 3rd Cougar along with Fredgard and Leonie Harm to qualify individually for the NCAA championships. And then in that group's final season, they saved their best golf for the postseason. The highest ever program finished at Big 12 championships, being one of the top teams in their regional throughout that competition and getting the reward of playing with the best of the best in the sport at NCAAs as a team. We've been lucky, you and I, you, Dustin, and I, me and Dustin originally, to talk about some really great senior classes across a number of different Cougar sports. And this group of 3 seniors absolutely belongs with all those other groups we've talked about previously. I mean, they're history makers, plain and simple.
Yeah.
I'm confident. I'm confident this group has a great leader in Coach Lydia Laspria, and we'll have great teams to talk about in the future, but this group will be the first to do that, and I hope they're remembered as such.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to put them in the conversation, like you said, of most transformative senior classes to come through since you and I have been fans, at least since this podcast has existed. Like you said, they took the program to places it hadn't seen with Big 12 finishes. Even that, they finished. This program won a couple of American championships, but they won a couple of American championships. They finished second in the Big 12, a much harder golf league than the American would be. Just kind of heading into the season, these are some stats just from heading into the season, and they've obviously built upon these postseason. It's just kind of hard to find the current everything going on there. But heading into the season, those 3 seniors, Alexa, Moa, and Natalie, had 3 of the top 5 lowest stroke averages in school history. Think about that. Like, I know it's been 10 years, but to have, because
there's been good golfers in that time.
You have a ladies European Tour winner, and she's also in the top 5, but that's the kind of level we're talking about here. 3 of the top 7 top 20 finishes in school history. Moa and Natalie St. Germain are top 5 and top 10 finishes. Like, those are the kind of things that if you hear them about any other program, you're losing your mind going, this is incredible work that they've done. Every time I will say this once again, it's a young program, but the things they've been able to accomplish as a young program and where these young women stand in the senior classes that have made the most difference in their program, it's hard to understate or hard to overstate exactly what these 3 meant. Just an amazing senior class. And buddy, history was made. We got to talk to coach about it. We both got to watch this team in person, enjoy some beautiful golf courses. What a team to follow. One of my favorite teams, non-basketball edition, to follow. This one, uh, you take out when we were students, but you add this one because I'm always going to love like '08 football, right? Like, but you take all those out, then you add in things post-graduation, basically. This team's up there with some of my favorite ones I've ever followed.
So obviously no easy task replacing this incredible group we've just talked about, represented 3 of your top 4 golfers, represents some of the best performances in program history. You are bringing back a rising senior and all-conference golfer in Malin Kim. That's a great starting point. I think you'd expect a transfer to be part of the mix next season. I mean, Coach Laspria said it herself when she was on last week. Simply being one of the programs that made the NCAA championships does make U of H a more attractive destination for your potential transfers. And I imagine that's going to be part of how the 26-27 roster is built. Also, you probably were going to go super heavy on transfers the last 2 or 3 cycles because it was pretty clear at that point you had a good core of players on this team that you wanted to build around. I think you're probably also looking for bigger contributions from Amelia Vaesto and Sadie Adams, who both got some exposure to playing tournament golf this season. Amelia was actually your 4th best golfer at the NCAA championships, which is cool. But performance-wise, probably those 2 behind your 3 graduating seniors and Kim. I'm excited to see what this program does in the future. And to echo what you said, it's been a delight to follow along with you, Bobby, over this full season of golf course. It was really cool to go see them in person at Las Vegas Country Club here earlier this season. That was really fun. Talk with Coach Laspria there, root on the Cougars, and excited for the future golf corners we have to talk about this team, because I don't think this is a one-off. I think this is going to be a program to watch for the long term.
Yeah, then you just look at some of the players that are still on the roster, right? That aren't leaving. Coach Laspria mentioned some of them as well, and you saw Shira Brambila actually be at national as she went to the national championships as an alternative, as a sub, and so who knows what she can do. She played in the 4 straight UIL state championships here in Texas out of South Lake. Like, there's some talent there with that. So, yeah, I would imagine you're probably going to see a couple of transfers in here, but I also think this could be one of those cycles where next year you have a really good year with some individuals like Malin Kim, but maybe you make a regional and do something like that, because you are turning over something like that. But Ellen Yates, who has had some good years, so I think there's some talent on the roster. But like you said, I wouldn't be surprised to see some transfer portal ladies come in, and you're going to be able to hit that portal pretty hard.
No doubt. And we'll get to the biggest off-field news around University of Houston athletics from the last week or so. Will Davis, current head coach at Lamar, someone we have discussed on this podcast as one of the top names to take the job at U of H, will be the next Houston Cougar baseball coach. Hallelujah, Bobby. We had Cougar news break in a way that actually lined up with our recording schedule. Not always a given. And Davis is a candidate you liked a lot from the jump when he was first connected to the job. Basically, the day it was announced that Todd Whitting wasn't coming back. One I have definitely warmed to over the last week plus with Lamar playing the NCAA tournament this weekend. Obviously, Davis won't start the job until his team is done playing in the NCAA postseason. And I was initially surprised when we started to see the news break that U of H would be making what sounded like an imminent announcement that Davis appeared to be the top candidate. And Lamar's season's not going to be over until minimum this coming weekend. But I mean, the more I thought about it, the more the specific situation makes sense. It removes any doubt or distraction that this is going to happen. It allows Davis and his current team to focus on the task of trying to play baseball as long as possible. And his name has been connected to the U of H job for over a week now. And it certainly didn't have any negative effect this past week. Lamar won the first 2 games, clinching the Southland series against McNeese and punching their ticket to the NCAAs. This not only removes any will he or won't he, but it allows Lamar's athletic department to start their head coaching search expediently and have their new leadership in place as soon as possible. Bobby, thoughts on the hire? Why Davis immediately stood out to you in a way that he didn't to me as a good candidate, and anything else related?
Yeah, I think I was intrigued by the name when he first popped up. Wouldn't have been my first choice. I think we can all agree that we kind of wanted Hallmark out of UTSA. I feel like if we were if money was a slight object, if money was no object, you'd go after anybody, right? But if something within reason, you thought maybe Hallmark was going to be within reason, so that probably would have been my first choice. But he was never really seriously mentioned as a candidate. In fact, it seemed like the school really tried to get out ahead of, hey, don't even start wishing for this guy. Like, don't even think that this is something that's going to happen. And how quick they were like, Hallmark's not a candidate. But of the candidates that kind of popped up early, I would say he was probably my first choice. And I liked him pretty early on. And the thing that kind of caught my attention was, yes, he had some bad first years at Lamar, but that to me felt like a young guy trying to learn how to coach baseball at the collegiate level. I love the head coaching experience. And then what he was able to do at Lamar, dude, it can't be easy to recruit to Lamar. Like, if you're going to recruit the same Houston State, like, at least you aren't in Beaumont, right? Like, you could be like, you're an hour, 15 minutes from Houston. You could still go to Astros games if you want. Like, there's things you can kind of recruit to that way that is a little tougher in Beaumont. Like, hey, it doesn't smell like butt when you come visit us, right? Like,
20
so,
minutes,
like,
21 minutes in Beaumont is catching strays, but I don't
it
disagree with
is what
anything
it
you said
is,
there.
man. But and so the other thing that I like was his ability to find good players and convince them to go to Beaumont. Because, last week you and I were kind of talking about it, and I mentioned that whenever I see what was the assistant coach of Texas that we were looking at?
No, Nolan Cain.
Nolan Cain. I'm like, Cain. I thought Sean Cain too. Cain. Nolan Cain. One of my big things was, yeah, he's known as a recruiting guru, but everywhere he goes are big name schools and it's easy to recruit there. And one of the things, the retort to that is, yeah, but he still has to find good players and do all of that. And it's not just about throwing money at players, it's building relationships and all of that. And yes, I agree. But what I've seen is Will Davis is able to find good players and also sell them on going to Lamar, right? And there's if you're selling players to go to Lamar and they stink, that's not good. And if you're finding good players but you can't get them to come to Lamar, that you got to find diamonds in the rough when you're at a school like Lamar. And the other thing that I really like is the development of his players. He's seen some transformations. His best hitter in 2025 was a player named Damian Ruiz. It was probably his best hitter if I had just based on average and that kind of stuff. You look at when I talk about finding talent. Damian Ruiz played for 2 years at HBU/HCU, whatever you want to call it, right? Whatever. His freshman year, he hit 263 with an OPS of 702. The next year, he must have gotten injured or something because he only played in 12 games, hit 222, OPS of 840. It's a wash year. He transfers to Lamar. Sam, remember his freshman year, he went 263 and 702. His 1 year at Lamar, he bats 388 and slugs 1.119. That's pretty good, man. And then if you're like, oh man, yeah, he was doing it against Southland Conference competition. Sam, do you know where Damian Ruiz played this year?
I do not.
Arkansas. Damian Ruiz played at Arkansas, played in 50 games, all 50 games, averaged, and his batting average was 315, OPS of 917.
Pretty good.
That's good development, man. If you go from 263 at HCU to 315 at Arkansas, I don't know, man. Like that seems to be pretty good for me. Now you can also look at the pitching. You look at a guy like Chris Olivier, and another pitcher that I plucked from the Lamar stat book. And you just watch his numbers drop. His ERA gets lower every single year he plays. Every single year he plays. He starts at New Orleans, ERA of 7.53. You look his first year at Lamar, 3.39. That's the same conference. His ERA, going from a freshman to a sophomore, you can say there's some growth there. I don't know if there's 4 earned runs worth of growth that can happen there. And then, Sam, you wouldn't believe it. This year, he's got a 2.66 ERA.
Pretty good.
I'm sorry. that's player development. You're identifying good players. You're convincing them to come to Beaumont. He took a guy out of Houston and convinced him to go to Beaumont. And then he took a guy out of New Orleans and was like, hey, do you want a slightly, and by slightly I mean a lot worse version of your city that you're currently in? Come to Beaumont, right? So he's able to identify. It's clear that him and his staff are able to identify lots of talent, really good talent, and a lot of that staff's coming over with him. So for me, I think it's a home run hire, especially you get the more and more I dive in, the more and more I love that he has the head coaching experience. I know a lot of Cougar fans wanted Sean Allen. I like the head coaching experience. I don't think Sean was necessarily a bad candidate, but if we're being honest, you can kind of see a little bit of a bridge between, the Rainer. It was just another inside the family kind of move if you bring Sean Allen in. And I think that's something that this baseball program needs is, yes, you can say it could be a friendly hire because Nunez knew him from LSU and that's kind of how these things work. And maybe that was your guy all along and you didn't really look at the right amount of people because you knew you wanted a guy that you'd worked with in the past, and that can be limiting. Yes, I agree. But for me, the head coaching experience, and the more and more I dive into Will Davis, the more and more I get excited. I still would have rather had Hallmark, obviously, because he's done it at, I would say the American's a better baseball conference than the Southland. And so because of that, you'd see that success at that level. But Will Davis making the tournament this year and everything you see with his player development, it's very rare as I went through the roster to watch a guy come into Lamar and then get worse. That didn't happen very often.
I'm really glad you mentioned the Ruiz transfer because that in a nutshell is what programs of Lamar Station are dealing with. Like, you find guys, you develop them. If the guy does really well and has college eligibility left, guess what? Like, you're gonna have the Arkansas of the world, or you're gonna have maybe slightly less. You're gonna have programs with much bigger NIL budgets, programs that offer players a chance to play against higher level competition, which guys you have a hard time turning that down if you started your career at HCU and Lamar. You know what I mean? But the fact he was able to not just develop those guys, which is a very important piece of that, but to reload when inevitably that development led to bigger fish circling for some of those players. Did, I think, a good job with like high school development, really good job with transfer development. Like, we could probably do another like 30-40 minutes just going case by case of guys who came from other Division I programs and then came into the Lamar program and did noticeably better. And not just, a guy transferred down, though. Again, U of H is doing some of that. You're at a higher level than Lamar, but there is a chance you're going to find guys who maybe didn't work out an SEC program who can come here and put some stuff together, and they're a good pitcher or a good hitter. So you are still doing some of that at U of H, but guys from comparable schools, like a guy at UNO who kind of struggled at UNO in the same conference, goes to Lamar's a better player. Guy from HCU, same conference as Lamar, goes there, becomes a better player. And that's really exciting stuff. And I think makes it even more exciting that you are confirmed also today that Lamar's pitching coach, Jace Hutchins, will be joining Davis here once the season ends, along with Lamar's hitting coach and associate head coach, Scott Hatton, longtime Lamar assistant and program alum as well, who was actually, I was sort of surprised he didn't get more run to run that program as a long time assistant and alum. What I really like about the pitching staff, Lamar comes into the postseason 36th in the country in team ERA and did it while apparently dealing with a number of injuries to critical arms on their staff. Hatton, as their recruiting coordinator, has brought in some really good classes for that level to Lamar. Like, whatever they're doing NIL wise, and from what I've seen, they're probably on the higher end of Southland NIL. Like, they were still beating programs with much bigger budgets. They were still winning games against teams that have a much easier sell to players, so to speak, than what Lamar is dealing with. I think what excites me most about the hire is that Davis has had to deal with those challenges that you and I have talked about, that smaller D1 programs face in the current era with NIL, how it's never been easier for players to transfer. And despite those challenges in this specific era, has done his best work. I mean, the Southland specifically is is as challenging in its own right, because yes, it's a smaller conference, but there are also a lot of programs in that conference who take the sport of baseball seriously. McNeese in Southeast Louisiana historically, UTRGV is a newer member, but they're definitely at the high end of support for that level of baseball. And yet again, his best results have come in the most recent years. I'm confident Davis will raise the floor here, and U of H's on-field results will look better than they did the last few years. For me, whether U of H can take the next step and be a Big 12 program capable of getting back to the NCAA postseason very consistently, I think actually has less to do with Davis and the new staff and more to do with what U of H and U of H's money people are willing to put into the baseball program. Because acknowledging that the results under Todd Whitting necessitated a change, bad NAL budget or not, missing the conference tournament 2 out of 3 years, the expectation has to be higher than that at U of H. If U of H remains near the bottom of the Big 12 in NIL support, then you can only expect so much for significant on-field improvement. Lamar has a pretty senior-heavy team this year, so I don't expect a huge contingent of players to follow Davis from there. They did have a couple standouts who I would like to see wearing a Cougar uniform next season. Jarrett Williams was one of their best pitchers this season. Started out as a midweek starter and reliever, worked his way into their weekend rotation by the end of the regular season. 3.17 ERA in 54 innings, showed solid control for a first-year college player, only 2 wild pitches, averaged 3 walks per inning, which I think is pretty good for a freshman, and is a Houston area guy, actually is originally from Santa Fe. And also their starting junior catcher, Jake Wagner, worked his way into the lineup by the conference portion of the season, led the Cardinals with a 347 batting average, 14 multi-hit games, was all Southland Conference tournament, and went 5 for 9 at the plate in that championship series against McNeese. I think bottom line, a hire we both like, a hire people who cover the sport of college baseball and know it even more than we do really consistently think is a good one. There were other candidates you and I like more at the start, but as I sit here now, I do believe U of H ended up with the right kind of head coach to run this baseball program.
Yeah, I think something that has caught my attention today was absolutely anybody who heard this hire. It's very rare that you see, I don't want to call it the propaganda machine, but the hype machine come out for a hiring quite like you've seen with this one. Anyone who mentions this hire says it was an absolute home run of a hire. Besides, I would say some of our fellow Cougar fans who really wanted Sean Allen. I think if you go on various websites and you are scrolling social media and you go on certain message boards that I won't name here, the people there are very upset that it wasn't Sean Allen. But everywhere else, I did think it was weird that they on the press release kind of celebrating the hire, they used Texas's head coach as like, they did a good hire here. And I'm like, a lot of our fans aren't going to like that, guys. A lot of our fans aren't going to like that.
But I mean, Schlossnagle is probably one of the best 2 or 3 head coaches in the country, you know?
Absolutely. No, I'm not arguing that. It's just, I saw it and I was like, oh, there are going to be some people who are pissed off about that one. Can't wait to hear, can't wait to see the discourse around Jim Schlossnagle, given this his stamp of approval.
First time since the 1994 season that this program will have a head coach who is outside the family, so to speak, even though the head coach that year, Bragg Stockton, was a former Cougar assistant. I mean, Rainer Noble, head coach of our earlier years of Cougar fandom from 1995 to 2010, was a Cougar alum, former assistant. Todd Whitting, obviously U of H alum and former assistant. First hire since Lovett Hill in 1950, who did not have any previous ties, whether player or assistant, to the U of H program. And to something you said earlier, I think probably for the best that you did go outside the family. Nothing against the Cougar baseball family, but that can kind of get stale at times. And I think it is good to have somebody who doesn't necessarily have those ties and can kind of just bring a fresh voice and bring a fresh perspective while still having experience coaching in this footprint, which I think is obviously very important for anyone you'd want to hire as the University of Houston's baseball coach.
Yeah, I think you look at that Lamar roster up and down, it's all Texas Southeast Texas, and there's some Louisiana in there, but a guy who I think is going to have the recruiting chops and has been in different schools to recruit guys. And a lot of times you do see success with somebody from like a lower program like that who's taken flyers on some high school kids and gotten the better, higher caliber athletes get steered to his direction because he took care of so and so 2 years ago, and he had this undiscovered talent or something like that. So I think you're going to see a lot of positive with this hire.
Fully agree. And we'll get to our penultimate event that I mentioned at the beginning of this episode of the U of H sports calendar with no other teams now in season. That penultimate event is the NCAA West Track and Field Prelims hosted this year by the University of Arkansas, where the Cougar Track and Field will send some of its top performing athletes with the hope of advancing on to what I don't believe I'm overstepping and saying is the premier college track and field event, the NCAA Outdoor Championships at the University of Oregon. Bobby, can I set the stage for this? Like what's going on here, and then talk about some of the top athletes to watch?
Of course, go, buddy.
What I like about outdoor season is that unlike indoor season, where in that season, the highest performers in an event or relay go just straight from conference championships to the NCAAs, you could be the top performing athlete in your event, but if you don't perform at this first round or have a bad day, that's the season. One of those moments actually in Cougar Track and Field history that really underscores the stakes of this part of the season was during the 2019 outdoor season. U of H had one of the premier 4x100 relays in the country, but dropped baton during your run at prelims meant U of H did not end up moving on to NCAA Outdoors in Austin that season. Amplifying that heartbreak was the fact that even without the 4x1 participating, the Cougar men were third among all teams at Outdoors that season. So I do love the concept, though, as a sports fan, of having to earn your place in the championship, no matter how well you did at any point prior to the season. No team scores here. It's basically, at this point, individuals competing for a chance to go to NCAA Outdoors, where you'll go back to kind of more of the team outdoor track and field setting. Each region, the East and West, features the top 48 athletes in the events. In the case of relays, the top 24. You're all fighting for 12 spots per region to go to NCAA Outdoors. With relays, you have 24 per region fighting for 12 spots. The only exception are the multi-athletes, the decathlon and heptathlon. Those athletes do just go straight from the conference championships to NCAA Outdoors if they're one of the top 24 performers in the entire country in the outdoor season. Decent job explaining that, Bobby. Do we have an idea of format and all that good stuff here?
You nailed it.
So we'll get to the athletes taking part. You can confirm here. I went back to my trusty friend, Microsoft Excel, to go fully in depth and take a look at all the events and athletes to watch from both the men's and women's teams. And I'll go in exactly that order, talking about the top athletes or relays from the men and then the women. We'll lead with the 4x1 relay on the men's side, fresh off winning the Big 12 championship and setting the Arizona facility record. They currently have the third fastest time in the West region. You're behind only Minnesota and Oregon in that order. Minnesota's time, the top one, is 7/100ths faster than what the Cougs ran at Big 12 Outdoors in Tucson. You can expect to see the same quartet running this in Fayetteville as we saw in Tucson. Ryan Mulholland, Sean Aibobo, Dakari Charlton, Louis Inchliff on the anchor leg. And that exact same quartet will actually be representing the Cougars individually in the 100 meters. Cougs had an all-around really strong weekend in this event at Big 12 Outdoors. I mean, you just unfortunately ran into Arizona's Mason Lawyer having an absolute heater of a weekend at his home track. Inchliff and Dakari Charlton have the 5th and 16th best performances respectively in the region. Aibobo has the 30th and Mulholland has the 32nd best. This will be an incredibly successful trip if you can get multiple athletes past this stage and advancing to Eugene. And given how well Inchliff and Charlton have been running lately, that feels definitely possible. One athlete I'll be really curious to watch is someone I just mentioned, Sean Aibobo, who's been really without a doubt one of your best freshman performers in years, but he did have a tough Big 12 outdoor weekend previously. He currently has the 8th fastest time in the 200 meter. That was the time that actually broke the Ireland national record. He ran it late in the regular season. Teammates Charlton and Jalen Reeves-Lyle are both coming off season best performances in the 200 at Big 12 Outdoors. Charlton is the 10th best performer at NCAA West Prelims. Reeves Lyles checking in at 15. You're going to need another strong set of performances from the two more veteran athletes, that trio I just mentioned. I mean, not to mention better meet from Aibobo, but not at all unrealistic that, like the 100, you could potentially be sending multiple athletes to Eugene. Frankly, wouldn't surprise me if all three of these guys end up advancing to NCAA Outdoors. The top performing athlete or relay or anything from both Cougar teams is actually Andrea Mita in the men's high jump. He has the number 2 performance among all high jump athletes at this meet. He cleared 7 feet 5 inches to win at Big 12 Outdoors. It was his first outdoor conference title in his collegiate track career. And I'm really excited to see if he has another big performance in him. He's done so many different amazing things over his 3-year U of H career to this point, but I'm excited to see if he can finally get on the podium at an NCAA championship. I think the performance we saw at Big 12 Outdoors tells you he could be, but obviously first order of business will be doing what he needs to do at prelims. And you have that category of a few men's athletes who are looking for a bit of redemption after not having maybe vintage performances back at the conference championship meet. In addition to Aibobo, hurdler Anthony Trucks came into Big 12 Outdoors projected as a top 4 performer in the 110 hurdles, but he struggled. He just got into the finals as the 8th fastest athlete in prelims and then ended up finishing in exactly 8th again in the finals, which is the lowest position that'll still get you a team point. I mean, Trucks comes into this meet with the tied for 17th fastest time in the 110 hurdles among qualifying athletes. So not far off that top 12 projected cutoff, but that time was also at a meet over a month ago now, is the Michael Johnson Invitational at Baylor. So he'll need to find his season best performance to make his first trip to Eugene representing the Cougars. And on the field side, you had 2 men's throwers who didn't have great performances at Big 12s. Ty Lott came into that event with the top performance of the men's hammer throw, ultimately finished 4th. And then CJ Nwokeji ultimately fouled on all of his attempts and could not advance to the later stages. Good news, not all is lost. Both Lott and Nwokeji, particularly Nwokeji, have shown this season that they have really high levels of performance in them. Nwokeji currently has the 6th best performance of any athlete in the men's shot put this meet, with Lott having the 18th in the hammer throw. Kanan Wari, guy to watch, coming off career best performance at Big 12 Outdoors, where he won the discus throw. He's another throw squad athletes to watch. He currently has the 16th best performance in the discus. Probably needs to have another career performance to punch his ticket to Eugene, but an athlete really seeming like he's performing at his best in what should be his final outdoor season. Last but not least, for the men, I will mention the other relay, the 4x400. Not necessarily a favorite to move on to the next stage the way that your 4x1 relay is, but also it wouldn't be at all a surprise for them to be moving on. They currently have the 14th best performance in this relay, which tells you they could absolutely be around that cut line of the relays that are moving on to Eugene. Bobby, any thoughts about any of the men's performers I just mentioned?
You know, you did a really good job of covering everything. I think the thing to be most excited about is that 4x1 coming off the Big 12 championships and got a chance to return to nationals. I think the other big one to obviously get a little excited about is Louis Inchcliffe running the 100 meter. He's one of the fastest guys in the world. Ran at the Olympics. Just going to be really fun to kind of watch him go as well. Anytime you get to watch somebody that exciting on a track who can really bring it like he can, it's hard not to get excited about that.
Yeah, he's running his best times here late in the season, which I think is exciting. You see that trend line of he's performing his best at the time of the year where you need to be performing at your best. For the women, most of your strongest hopefuls to move on to outdoors are coming from the field side, though the 100 hurdles has a couple of veterans who I think have a decent chance of moving on. Casey McCoy came into the Big 12 Outdoors as one of your top projected female athletes in any event, but in the prelim, she clipped her foot on the hurdle, didn't ultimately make the finals. Silver lining, though, was Miracle Thompson, I think somewhat unexpectedly qualifying for the finals and at least giving the Cougars a point in an absolutely stacked Big 12 field in the 100 hurdles. Some chance for redemption here for McCoy. She comes in with the 13th best time, and obviously Thompson at 22nd among all athletes in the West Prelim shouldn't be counted out either. Similar story in the women's shot put, where Cleo Ajapong had kind of a disappointing performance at Big 12 Outdoors after coming in as the number 2 performer among conference athletes in the women's shot put. But silver lining there, her teammate Sydney Freeman had a career performance, got the Cougars the second place points that you might have expected to come from Ajapong in that event. Freeman currently has the 30th best performance of athletes at this meet, so probably fair to classify her as an outsider, but that Big 12 outdoor performance also has me keep an eye on her, and Ajapong has certainly shown over the course of the season that she has an elite performance in her, I think, 2 exciting sophomores. Certainly worth watching for this meet and worth watching for the long term. Evgenia Maria Panagiotou, her 5th place performance at Big 12 Outdoors in another really stacked event, the women's pole vault, also has me keeping an eye on her. She has currently the 26th best performance, but an athlete whose recent performance history shows someone who's clearly able to rise to the moment. So definitely keep an eye on her. Ditto for Shiana Hall in the triple jump, a freshman, one of your top performers coming into Big 12s. But I remember going into that meet, she was a bit of a wild card. She hadn't been one of your most consistent performers. She had a great performance at Baylor that meet in the regular season and ultimately topped her best performance from that meet at Baylor to finish 6th at Big 12 Outdoors. She has the 11th best performance. So she probably needs to have one more real good performance in her to finish her first college season the top meet, but impossible not to be excited about what she's done given what we've seen here in her first collegiate outdoor season. The only women's relay that I believe has an outside chance of moving on is the 4x400, which had strong performances in the regular season at the Texas Relays and Penn Relays, managed to score multiple points in the finals at Big 12 Outdoors, and another really stacked final. Probably an outsider to move past the stage, but at least worth keeping an eye on from the women's relays because they've been capable of big performances and big moments. Won the Texas Relays, did well at the Penn Relays, 2 of the historic events on the outdoor track and field calendar. So a team to keep an eye on there, even if the performance, I think, probably says they'd accurately be an outsider. So those are all your athletes and relays to watch from the Cougar men and women this coming week. Really excited to see who we'll be talking about in a week's time after the stage. The events will be starting tomorrow. I guess today, as you're listening, Wednesday, running through Saturday at Arkansas with all day streaming on ESPN Plus. We'll certainly myself be tuning in for the key events as time and life allow, and might just have a special guest coming on here in the next week or two to help us preview the NCAA Outdoor Championships, which I know Bobby and I are both quite excited about.
Yes, sir. Super excited about that. So, overall, really excited to watch Cougars compete on a national level. So yeah, let's have some fun this weekend.
Couple programs with some outgoings and ingoings. We'll talk about the program with the outgoing first. Cougar softball, which has now been finished for just over a month, and probably your biggest news here in the early stages of the off season, though softball is still going on currently. In the last couple weeks, Maddie Hartley indicated her intention to enter the transfer portal. Hartley led the Cougs this past season in batting average, home runs, and RBI. Was one of 2 Cougar hitters ever to reach the 20 home run mark, tied for the Big 12 lead in homers in the regular season, while really being one of the conference's top hitters in every measurable category. So it's a big loss, but not a surprising loss. She was recruited by the previous staff, and frankly, even if she hadn't been, the kind of numbers she put up in a good conference are going to lead her to potentially getting a chance to play for some of the best softball programs out there. I mean, no guarantee, even if U of H is much improved next season, that Hartley would even be playing for an NCAA tournament level team, much less an NCAA tournament level team capable of making a run to Oklahoma City. And unfortunately, Bobby, just feels unlikely that'll happen here next season. So can't begrudge her leaving and seeing what her options are elsewhere.
Yeah, totally understand her leaving. Like you said, one of the best players, I would argue the best player on your team last year. And yeah, don't begrudge her for leaving at all. Wish she would stay as a Cougar fan, but also totally understand that she wants to go and compete for a team that's going to see regionals, have a shot at supers. Not saying that this team couldn't do that next year, and I would love for them to, but they can go Maddie can go somewhere where it might be a little more guaranteed than more of what we see here.
I mean, Brooke Wells last season was your top hitter on that team. Good numbers, by the way, but I would say demonstrably worse numbers across the board And she ended up with Alabama, one of the premier programs in the sport. So I think you can deduce from that there are going to be some big programs with good recent postseason resumes who will be among Hartley's suitors for her next college softball destination.
Yep, totally. Little heartbreaking, but that's how it goes sometimes, buddy.
And the program also had a change on the coaching side as the assistant coach over pitching, Nairi White, will not be returning for the 2027 season. I mean, seemed like it was what we talked about every week of the program. I mean, it's no secret. The pitching for the Cougs this past season was historically bad. The one aspect of this I do feel bad about is that White was largely working with a staff of pitchers who were holdovers off of a team who didn't pitch well in 2025. So it's not like, oh, well, you brought in some new arms and it didn't work out. I mean, you inherited a staff that wasn't very good at pitching a season ago and hasn't been very good at pitching in recent memory. And the results were worse, but also it's fair to ask whether any college softball pitching coach could have gotten drastically more out of that group than what we saw this season. But the results are the results. This was one of the worst pitching teams in all of college softball. And with that being acknowledged, it's hard to keep your job there, especially as a first-time college assistant like White. I mean, in all likelihood, this needs to be a clean slate. New pitching coach, largely new pitchers, if we're going to see that aspect of Cougar softball meaningfully improve next season. And that's kind of load bearing. If you don't meaningfully improve there, you can't expect to be better on the whole. Like if you're regularly giving up 9-10 more runs per, like there were so many weekends this season. I'm not saying you were good pitching away from being a Big 12 title contender, but you were good pitching away from not being dead last in the Big 12. Is that, you think that's fair to say?
Yeah, I think better pitching does a lot there. Like you said, I don't know if it's necessarily her fault, but if you're going to be a first time assistant, you're taking a flyer and you're really hoping that she can go out there and change a lot. And you're rolling the dice. You get away with hiring a possibly a more inexpensive assistant there, and you took a gamble, and it looks like it probably didn't pay off. Not saying that's all White's it all falls on White, but there is something to, you know, and it's the same with any other sport. If you're one of the worst defenses in the country, it doesn't matter if it's me, you, and all of our friends going out there playing defense. You go, hey, at some point the DC's got to go. So again, may not necessarily be all her fault, but you can't be one of the worst teams in the country at the thing you are coaching them at.
Yeah, you're not a pitching coach away. Like you're a pitching coach and an almost entirely new pitching staff away here. But yeah, you said results business. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on who Chrissy Shoemaker hires to fill that staff vacancy, as well as any transfer arrivals. I believe June 6th or 8th I saw is when the softball portal officially opens, so players can indicate intention to enter, which lots of them on teams whose seasons have ended have done already. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that here as we continue our off-season episodes. The happier news, though, we'll end on a positive note. Cougar tennis got its first edition since Valeriya Zeleva took over as head coach. Denver's Natalie Sinkova indicated over the weekend that she would be transferring to the University of Houston. Sinkova was a singles regular these past 2 seasons, which were her first 2 seasons playing American college tennis for the University of Denver, which is one of the sport's most consistent non-power conference powers. She was an All-Summit League selection both of the seasons that she played there. In the most recent season, she led Denver with 27 total singles wins during the spring season. She was 13-7 in singles, splitting her time between courts 3 and 4. Actually, in this year's NCAAs, she was a setup on her Arizona State opponent, Vivian Ostrovsky, in singles before that match was called due to ASU clinching the overall score. My big picture thought here is Sinkova's Denver team, power conference or non-power conference, was absolutely one on a similar level to this most recent U of H team. I think this is one of those situations where if the match was in Denver, I might have picked UD to win. If it was in Houston, I probably would have picked the Cougs. And if she was good enough to be a top 3 singles player for that Denver team, I think she's at least good enough to be a top 4 singles player on a Big 12 program like this one, which is why I think I'm really excited about the ad. We'll also say as of this recording, things can change, but there hasn't been any new information about current projected Cougar returning players entering the portal. Nothing definitive. Could be a timing thing. I will say, trying to remember back to 2 years ago, I don't believe any of the Grand Canyon to U of H transfers that we saw when Kat Adamovich took over this job were announced until the summer. But counter to that, I will note that Adamovich's current program, Oklahoma State, has added a transfer from Florida State, has added an international prospect, but none of the U of H players yet. So it's not a matter of, you can't announce players transferring at this moment. I did see right after the announcement that Zeleva would be taking over, that U of H assistant coach from this past season, Chris Wooten, and grad assistant Santos Strombaja would be joining Adamovich's Oklahoma State staff. No real surprise there. I won't believe we're returning multiple players from this most recent team until the moment I see it. But if you can, we'll say, keep 2/3 of the trio of Crotina, Sepa, and Drame, and get some more transfers of Sinkova's caliber here, I'm feeling pretty good about Cougar Tennis going to next season. But even if that ends up not being the case, I'm really excited about Zeleva's first transfer ad, and hopefully that's a statement about the level of players she'll be bringing to this program for the coming season.
Yeah, I think when I first heard it, you had sent it to me. You'd seen it before me. And my first question for you was, she was a 3, sometimes a 4 at Denver. Like, sure, they were good, but like, why should this get me overly excited? And you were quick to say that Denver team is always good. If you're good enough to be a 3 there, you're probably good enough to be a 3 here. So not to be overly disappointed. And so I took that, and yeah, I'm super excited she's going to be here. Maybe not your new number 1 or anything like that, but a player who, it seems, after talking to you about it and kind of doing a little Googling myself, seems like it raises the floor. May not raise the ceiling of the team, but definitely raises the floor of the team for sure.
Yeah, single starter. You could pencil her in somewhere in the top 4, maybe 5 courts if you get just a really stacked transfer class to come in here, which is good. Even if you retain everyone you expected to retain, you had a pretty good size graduating class off of this year's team. So you need to fill out the roster, and good to see that Coach Zeleva is wasting no time to do that.
Yep.
All right, Bobby, we did it. Do your thing, man.
All right. Well, that is it for this week's episode of the Scott Holman podcast. I want to thank you guys so much for listening, Sam, and I really do appreciate it because we put in a lot of effort into this, and knowing that we're not yelling into the void is always a positive. But if you have any feedback for us, you can find us on social media. That will be on Twitter at SH Podcast. You can find us on Blue Sky at podcast.bsky.social. If you want to email us, we also take emails, and that will be shpodcast@gmail.com. If you really want us to pay attention to you, Sam, they can find us on patreon.com.
They sure can.
/SH Podcast for as little as $5 a month. We got some cool stuff coming up. You will probably hear portions of the cool things we have coming up in next week's episode, possibly. But overall, super excited about what we're going to do in the off season and some of the cool stuff we're doing with that. And $5 a month gets you all that premium content. And then football season next year. I mean, this year we did post-game shows, all types of stuff. So look forward to keeping it rolling. So $5 a month gets you that premium content. And then Sam mentioned this earlier. I haven't said it in a while, but if none of that sounds appealing to you, at least give us a 5-star rating on your podcast app of choice. We really do appreciate it. Sam, I think I covered everything, but what do we always say?
Go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs! Let's go!